Chelsea Green. Yes, Chelsea Green is reportedly in talks for a return to Impact Wrestling. Of course, Chelsea Green is a name that when she was released by WWE back in April, a lot of people thought, given her history with Impact Wrestling, she is a former Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion as Laurel Van Ness. Her partner, Matt Cardona, is also with Impact Wrestling. Given her history, given her ties currently and in the past of Impact Wrestling, it would be highly likely that she would return to the promotion, and this could be happening because Chelsea Green is reportedly in talks for a return to Impact Wrestling. Now, of course, Chelsea Green was released from her WWE contract back on April 15, along with her other WWE superstars and talent due to budget cuts. Now, the Wrestling Observer newsletter is reporting that Green has been in contract talks with Impact officials over the course of the past week or so, but it looks like no deal was closed as of Thursday. Now, Green and the other WWE talents released on April 15 are under a 90-day non-compete clause, making them free agents to sign with other promotions after Wednesday, July 14. Now, Green previously, of course, worked for Impact Wrestling from 2016 to 2018 as Laurel Van Ness and is a former Knockouts champion. Now, there has been speculation on Green possibly returning to Impact after Executive Vice President of Impact Wrestling Scott D'Amore publicly reacted to her WWE release on Twitter and has teased on several occasions that she could be set to return in the future. Now, when it does come to Chelsea Green as well, Fightful Select have also posted a story about her recently. She's done quite a few interviews with a lot of different outlets, one being Fightful. Now, this doesn't actually pertain to her contract, but I think it does kind of tie in to when she'll be physically, anyway, able to perform for Impact Wrestling once her 90-day non-compete clause expires. Now, Chelsea Green told Fightful Select, which of course is their Patreon service, be sure to check that out. They do a very good job, a lot of exclusive and insider information with a very good track record of being accurate. Chelsea Green noted last week that she has had surgery to remove a plate in her arm from her first break several years ago. Now, Fightful were told that the recovery time is only about 6 weeks or so, and she will be healthy and cleared ahead of a free agency period on July 15 if all goes well. Now, her actual bone was swelling and rejecting the plate that was inserted during her original surgery. Previously, WWE had advised Chelsea Green to keep the plate in, which actually made her more susceptible to the November 2020 arm break. Now, that November 2020 arm break, of course, happened on Chelsea Green's debut on SmackDown. It was incredibly unfortunate, wasn't it, at the time? She makes a debut on SmackDown, breaks her arm, she was out, and then she never wrestled for WWE again. She had been cleared, but she never wrestled for the company again, and that was kind of it. So it was really disappointing, wasn't it? Her whole WWE run in general, of course, she did some good stuff on NXT, but her whole WWE run in general was just filled with bad luck, bad timing, and just didn't go to plan. And obviously, there was the situation where she did debut, I think, on Raw randomly. And that didn't pay off in the end. I think that was because of the pandemic. And then obviously she makes a debut on SmackDown. That doesn't pay off because of the injury. So it was just very unfortunate. And obviously she's very talented and she's very good at what she does. She really did make a name for herself when she was working in Impact Wrestling in the past as Laurel Van Ness. And she kind of proved herself during that period of time, not only to be obviously a great talent inside the ring, and everyone knows her talents inside the ring as a worker. But I think her time as Laurel Van Ness really did open some eyes, because I think a lot of people finally saw of this character side of her. Laurel Van Ness was such a character in the sort of jilted bride, the crazed bride, becoming a Knockouts champion, having the crazed lipstick smeared all over her face, and she did a fantastic job with that character. And by all accounts, when she was in WWE, again, this kind of got some headlines. Chelsea Green has been one for getting quite a few headlines since her release, frankly. But it got quite a few headlines. She did an interview, I think it was with Fightful. Again, she spoke to Fightful at least a couple of times, as far as I'm aware. And she did an interview where basically she revealed all of these ideas that she had pitched when she was under contract to WWE. I think one of them was the girlfriend of Dominic Mysterio. I think another one was this sort of crazed psycho nun for Seth Rollins while he was the Monday Night Messiah. I think one was, again, something to do with like Sister Abigail and something like Bray Wyatt. There was a ton of these ideas. I was surprised. Frankly, I was surprised to see that some people criticized her for that, going, "Oh, look at because I think the general impression was they were all kind of the same character, this sort of crazy psycho woman." And you sort of go, first of all, they're not the same character, but two, even if they were, that's kind of the gimmick she did in Impact Wrestling. So obviously that's the gimmick she feels comfortable doing. And what's the problem? If it works, if the character works, then why not go for it? So I never had an issue with that at all. I think actually she also said that when she randomly appeared on Monday Night Raw during that period, she appeared on Raw because she had the balls, essentially, to email Paul Heyman and say, can you call me up to Raw? And he did, which is kind of funny when you look back on it. Nevertheless, I think she obviously deserved a break in WWE that she just didn't get, and it was very unfortunate. And it was strange to see her released earlier this year, considering that she had debuted on SmackDown. The injury was unfortunate, and there were talks prior to her release that she was backstage at SmackDown. She was getting cleared. She was ready to go, and obviously these budget cuts happen, and there's lots of names when it comes to those budget cuts that surprise people and people don't understand, and people to this day, myself included, don't understand why some of those talents were released. People like Samoa Joe being released to this day is mind-boggling. The Iconics, Billy Kay and Peyton Royce, again, them being released again to this day is mind-boggling. It really is. So when it comes to Chelsea Green, as I mentioned, hearing that she's reportedly in talks with Impact Wrestling, for me, is not surprising. We've spoken quite extensively here at this point here on the channel, haven't we, about names that I expect to come into Impact, and obviously when it comes to the names that are released by WWE, a big point for Impact Wrestling, and frankly, I think a big turning point for Impact Wrestling last year in terms of the momentum that they built last year was when those talents from WWE got released, because Impact Wrestling really capitalized on that, started teasing all of these names for Slammiversary, and it got a lot of buzz. It really did. It got a lot of buzz and a lot of attention during a period of time where everyone was at home due to the pandemic. And everyone was kind of thinking, well, are these names going to show up in Impact? Are Impact reaching out? Are Impact trying to capitalize on this? What's going on? And looking back on it, a lot of the names that they did tease Impact, they did follow through on. Whether it was Eric Young, EC3, the Good Brothers, you name it. They followed through on quite a few names. Heath and Brian Myers was another one. So all of those names that Impact did tease, a lot of them they did follow through on. So the general impression was that because they're doing the same thing again this year, Impact, and they have been doing the same thing, they've been teasing lots of names for Slammiversary, whether it's Samoa Joe, Chelsea Green, the Forgotten Sons, Daniel Bryan, Naito, Okada, Mickey James, again, the Iconics. They're teasing them all. They really are teasing them all. And I know a lot of people are looking at this and kind of rolling their eyes and going, ugh, Impact teasing these names, how many are actually going to show up? And of course, not every name is going to show up. And obviously, Impact Wrestling are doing this because it worked for them last year and it is getting attention for them. And people are talking about it and people will be interested to see who show up. Pro wrestling fans love, and I'm telling you this as a content creator here on YouTube, that pro wrestling fans love mystery. They love mystery. They love trying to figure things out. They love a whodunit or a mystery person or a mystery debut. They love it. The only issue is that sometimes our imaginations can run wild and we end up getting something that is disappointing, or we set our expectations too high or whatever. AEW Revolution's a great example of that. AEW said we're going to have a mystery Hall of Fame signing, and it was. It was Christian Cage. He is a Hall of Fame worthy signing. He's a great wrestler, and for some reason, because people's minds and imaginations ran wild, people thought they were going to get Brock Lesnar or CM Punk or something like that. And when they got Christian, they were let down and they criticized AEW for that. Oh, you overhyped it. No, they didn't. You overhyped it in your own mind. But nevertheless, that's a bit of a tangent there I've gone off on. But nevertheless, when it comes to the names that are being teased for Slammiversary, I've said this on several occasions here on the channel, that I would be absolutely flabbergasted if we don't get anyone show up at Slammiversary, because it's not happening. We are getting at least one former WWE star that was really showing up at Slammiversary, probably more, I would think, but we're getting at least one. And if we're getting at least one, and you ask me, out of all the names that were released by WWE earlier this year, what name is the most likely name that you would say, Owen, you've got to put all of your money, you've got to put all of your money and all this kind of stuff, you've got to put it on one person that was released by WWE to show up at Slammiversary in July, who would it be? I'd pick Chelsea Green. And that was even prior to these reports coming out about Chelsea Green being in contract negotiations with Impact Wrestling, because everything there makes logical sense. Everything makes logical sense. from the standpoint of, as I mentioned, her history of Impact. She's a former Knockouts champion. She was there during the current regime. She was there when Scott D'Amore was there. Don Callis, I know, is no longer an executive, but she was there when Scott D'Amore was there. She was a former Knockouts champion. Her partner, Matt Cardona, is with the company right now, so obviously there's the connection there too. She could come in. Well, I mean, we're working under the assumption she would come in and be the exact same Laurel Van Ness character. Who's to say she doesn't come back in as Laurel Van Ness, but she comes in as Matt Cardona's partner, and maybe they're paired together on screen? Who's to say that doesn't happen, right? Who's to say that doesn't happen? So the connection's there, and I know she could go to AEW. She could absolutely go to AEW, and I think if you're a female talent, and this would be my sort of general piece of advice, not that anyone would ask, but this would be my general piece of advice of, if you're a female talent that's been released by WWE, of course you could go to AEW. And the AEW's women's division, for me, does have great talent in there. Hikaru Shida, Britt Baker, Serena Deeb, Thunder Rosa. I know Thunder Rosa is an NWA talent. Abaddon, Ty Conti, Anna Jay when she comes back. They've got talented females there. There's no doubt about it. My issue has never been with the talent in AEW Women's Division. I know previously or prior or maybe months ago, people have said, the talent is just not there. I never bought into that. I think the talent's always been there for the AEW Women's Division. My issue when it comes to AEW has always been the booking of the talent and the opportunities that talent aren't given from the female side of things in AEW, in that you didn't have females in main events and you only had them in one match per show, and it felt like, here's the token female match of the show, we're going to put it before the main event, it's going to go 5 minutes, get in, get out. There's no story heading into the women's championship matches at pay-per-views and all that kind of stuff. Now, that was my criticism before. I do think AEW has improved on the presentation of women's wrestling in their company. I do. We had 2 matches on Dynamite this past week. We had, obviously, the AEW Women's World Champion in action. We also had the NWA Women's World Championship on the line. Serena Deeb, I'm a huge fan of. I think she's tremendous in the ring. She really, really is talented. And the Women's Championship match at Double or Nothing, Hikaru Shida versus Britt Baker, does feel like a big deal. And I think Britt Baker's incredible talent. I do think she's the face of that division, despite being a heel. I think she's tremendous. And I think there's a ton of talent on that roster, and I think eventually they're working their way to getting a better presentation of the women's division. I won't give AEW credit for it, though, because this is something that should have been happening since the beginning of Dynamite. This is something that shouldn't have just started happening now in 2021, when they had that fantastic main event, that lights-out match between Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa that everyone was raving about, and it was tremendous, and it was great to see the females in the main event, and they deserve to be in the main event. I didn't, at the time, say, we shouldn't pat AEW on the back for this, because they should have been doing this a long time ago. They really should have been doing this a long time ago. And I found it baffling that people were starting to praise AEW. See, look, they put women in the main event. Good for them. Where has it been the whole time? I'm glad that it happened, but it shouldn't stop there, and it shouldn't have started there. It should have happened way before that. So if I was giving advice to a talent that left WWE or was released by WWE and they were a female talent, I wouldn't say go to AEW. I'd say go to Impact Wrestling, because the presentation of women's wrestling is just better. It's fundamentally better. You will have better opportunities to shine and thrive as a female talent in Impact Wrestling. You've got great talent there anyway. Deonna Purrazzo, Jordan Grace, Rachel Ellering, the list goes on. Fire and Flavor. The list can go on and on of the talent that they have there. Kimberly, Taylor Wilde, Tenille Dashwood. I can go on and on. And obviously, I think Taya Valkyrie departing, going to WWE, hurt Impact in the Knockouts division. But some of the names that they could be bringing in, whether it's Chelsea Green, whether it's Mickie James, whether it's the Iconics, there's a lot of talent there that they could bring in. I would say to someone like Chelsea Green, if you go into Impact Wrestling, I think you have a better chance to be featured in a prominent position. I think you have a better chance to really make an impact, pun intended. I think you have a better chance to face talent like a Deonna Purrazzo. And I think you just have a better chance of, winning championships and having either the Knockouts Tag Team Championship or the Knockouts Championship. And like I said, main event and pay-per-views, main event and TV specials, main eventing the show. The presentation's just overall better. The Knockouts division, the females division, has been a cornerstone, a pillar of Impact Wrestling for a long, long time. You will be better featured if you go to Impact. That's just my opinion. I think AEW's presentation of women's wrestling is improving, but it's not yet there yet. And that would be my advice to anyone. So that's why I would say Chelsea Green, I think, should choose Impact over AEW. She could go to AEW, and I think she would have success there, but would she be really used in the best way possible? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. Now, obviously, another place she could go is Ring of Honor as well. I mean, Ring of Honor are relaunching their women's division, and I think as a talent, it would be a risk because you don't know really what that women's division is going to look like. It's not as established as Impact Wrestling or even the AEW women's division, since it's kind of a relaunch of a women's division. I suppose the exciting and interesting part of it could be of Ring of Honor could certainly pitch something to Chelsea Green in the sense of, if you come into our women's division, you're going to be the face of the division. We're going to build that division around you. We know your talents. We know what you can do. I don't think she's worked with Ring of Honor before. I might be wrong. And you can be our female star for the entire company. That's a compelling argument, because when you're not in the WWE or you're in a smaller promotion, it's all about the spotlight. Where can I make the most impact? Like I said, where can I get the most attention? And maybe as the face of the whole division in Ring of Honor, that's compelling as well. So she certainly could go to Ring of Honor, but given the fact that reports are coming out saying that she's in contract talks with Impact Wrestling, despite nothing being signed as of yet, I think she's going to end up in Impact Wrestling. And that's something that I've been saying since the start, that if there was one person I expected to go to Impact Wrestling after WWE, it would be Chelsea Green. She would be the one that I would say, if you came up to me and said, Owen, pick someone out of all of these names that's going to appear at Impact Wrestling, who would it be? I would say it would be Chelsea Green. That was always my pick. When it comes to what she's going to do in Impact, I would suspect she's going to be at Slammiversary. I think quite a few of these talents are going to be there at Slammiversary. In what form, I don't know. We could see a situation where Deonna Purrazzo does an open challenge, and maybe Chelsea Green answers that. We could see a situation where Deonna Purrazzo is defending and then Chelsea Green comes out on the show. Who knows? We could just see a situation where, a bit like with the Good Brothers last year, just once the clock strikes midnight, suddenly Chelsea Green announces she's signed with Impact Wrestling. There's lots of different ways that they can do it, and I think it's going to be interesting which character she does bring to Impact if she does indeed sign. Does she revert back to the old Laurel Van Ness character of the crazed bride and the lipstick and all that kind of stuff? I don't think she does. I think she leaves that in the past. I think, Chelsea Green, despite some of the, press that she's received over the course of the last month or so, there's no doubt she's very creative. And she's very creative, and she's very good at coming up with characters, whether that is Laurel Van Ness, whether that is Chelsea Green in WWE, whether that's all the characters she pitched in WWE, Dominic Mysterio's girlfriend or Seth Rollins' crazed nun or all that kind of stuff. She's very character driven. So I wouldn't be surprised, frankly, looking at this from another point of view, I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea Green shows up in Impact at Slammiversary and just goes off into a completely different direction. She's a completely different character to anything she's ever done in the past. I wouldn't be surprised by that in the slightest. So it's very exciting. And as I mentioned, whilst nothing's been signed or agreed as of yet, I mean, you could look at this and say it's a negotiating tactic, and maybe that the Observer's putting it out there, or Chelsea Green's told the Observer to put it out there so that companies like Ring of Honor or companies like AEW, if they haven't negotiated with her already, are kind of like, oh gosh, she's going to go to Impact, I want to make sure we don't lose her, that kind of stuff. That could be the case, or it just could be the case that she's spoken to Impact, and Impact has spoken to Meltzer and said, look, we think we're going to get Chelsea Green, whilst nothing's signed yet, it looks like she's going to show up at Slammiversary. Lots of different outcomes, and it certainly is going to be a developing story over the course of the next few weeks as we get closer and closer to Slammiversary. So very exciting time as always to be an Impact Wrestling fan. But look guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Chelsea Green reportedly in contract talks with Impact Wrestling, although nothing is signed yet? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings, get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.